Welcome to Church Spotlight. I'm at the infamous Market Street in Pascagoula, where any resident of the Gulf Coast would instantly recognize this landmark church, Calvary Baptist, located directly on the Strip. And today we have the awesome opportunity to check out a closer look at this nearly 67-year-old church. Their pastor, Derek Tapper, is inside waiting for us to join him, so let's go in. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to your church.
We appreciate you coming and helping us and making our church known, and especially with such a history that Calvary has.
Well, for as long as I can remember, Calvary Baptist has been part of the landscape on Market Street here, and I'd like for us to delve into its history a little bit that began around 1943?
That's correct. I don't have a long history with Calvary myself, but my parents lived in Pascagoula for 25 years. Dad worked at Ingalls Shipbuilding, and when they moved back here, just after I left high school, I visited them all the time. And Market Street and Calvary Baptist Church was like the landmark, and back then it was the going church in the area.
When you say the going church, would be what year?
Well, my parents lived here from about 73 till, I don't know, they've been in Grand Bay maybe 10 years now. And so during those years, this church still had quite an impact in the community, and it was quite busy, quite a lot of ministries for kids and youth, and it was a place to come.
Right, so around the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, every church has a Katrina story, so how did Katrina mark its place here on the building?
Well, on this building where we're sitting, the water was about at our neck level, so it was just below the windows, and so it caused damage to everything in here. And this church has been totally reconstructed since Katrina, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's got to be one of the most pretty sanctuaries they have in town. And but at the time, it was quite a sad thing for so many people. Mm-hmm. But so it went through the throes of total renovation.
Well, when you say beautiful, I'll have to say that's an understatement. This sanctuary is gorgeous. It's beautiful. Whatever you did to restore and bring it back to its original glory, you definitely accomplished that, because it's really beautiful.
Well, that was a lot of people, a lot of volunteers, and I think it was the heart of those who had been here in the past and those who came to the Gulf Coast to help.
Well, how did Katrina affect the congregation internally here?
Well, I think, Katrina in many ways brought out the best and the worst in people, but here I think it was the best. It caused just many, many groups to come in and really lend a helping hand to people who felt pretty impotent and powerless at the time. And for them, I think it was, in some ways, Katrina's a godsend, because it taught people values that somehow we had lost in the past. Sure. And people helping people was a bigger value than even the material stuff that you had.
People came together.
They did, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of outside help come?
There was a lot of outside help. Now, I wasn't here at the time, but they had a lot of outside help from different groups, different church groups. We even used our facility for people to stay. We have a huge facility. We could sleep a lot of people. We have a big kitchen, and everything, of course, was upstairs because of that. But people they come to help in a big way.
Right. Where did the congregation meet after Katrina?
I'm not sure exactly where they met, but I know that they used the church as like an evacuation center for most of our seniors. And they started off using the whole facility, but when the water started to come up and rise, they could no longer use the kitchen or the Family Life Center. And a lot of our seniors actually had to be carried upstairs to the upstairs area because it was just too dangerous. And at the time, we almost had the kitchen blow up because of the gas that was involved and everything. So many people stayed here, but even that became pretty formidable during the storm.
Right, I can see where this would be a safe haven for the seniors that could come and feel like they still had a sense of home.
Yeah, and with so many of them being so elderly, they needed the help of someone else. So a lot of our younger families that were here actually tried to help them and accommodate them during that time.
We're going to take a break right here, but when we return, we're going to learn more about the man behind the pulpit. We'll be back in a moment. We're back. Brother Derek, what brought you to this area?
Well, it's an interesting story. Katrina changed a lot of people's lives, but it changed my life too. The time I was living in Canada, and I was a pastor of a congregation there, and we used to take mission trips, most of the time to Belize or Guatemala. But 2 weeks before Katrina, I was here to marry my son, who lives in Mobile, and his wife at a place called Promised Land in Irvington. And so we married them off, and it was a beautiful time in our life. We went back. 2 weeks later, Katrina hit. After Katrina hit, it was such a heaviness on my heart. My parents live in Grand Bay, and my boys lived in Mobile. Laura and I took a sabbatical from our church. They gave us 5 weeks to come down. And it was during that time I saw all the devastation and decided at that point in time I was going to raise some money and get my church involved. And so I was walking down Shell Belt Road in Balabatry, and a lot of the boats were docked that were still there. And there was a Vietnamese man and his grandson in his arms, and I went and talked to him and found out he was living on the boat because his house had 9 feet of water in it. And after asking him a few questions and with broken English, finding out where he lived, I went to his home, and I promised him that I'd be back. And I don't know if he believed me or not, but I promised him. His name was Sadang. And I says, I will be back, and I will fix your house. And it says, I will bring groups from Canada to do it. And that started the process. And I did 2 homes right after Katrina. And every year I was in Vancouver, I brought back another team and built more homes. I think we did 6 in those 2 or 3 years. And then I decided that, my wife and I decided, let's move back. Let's move back to help. And I wasn't sure she would do that, being a Canadian. And she had only lived in Canada. She'd been living in Canada since she was 5. They came over across on the Queen Mary.
So you married a Canadian?
I married she's from Belfast, Ireland, but she lived in Canada all of her life. So I married her. And then we came, we decided to come back. So it took me a couple of years to get immigration stuff, or we'd have been back sooner.
Right.
So 2 years ago, September, we'll be here and continue to help with Volunteers of America. I still raise money from Canada every year, and that funds the program. And the Volunteers of America is the organization that I've partnered with to make this happen. We continue to help people even today, and we've probably helped 29 families over the past 2 years.
So if someone still needed your help, how would they go about getting in contact with you?
They can contact the Volunteers of America, or they can contact Calvary Baptist Church, and I'd be happy to entertain their request. And we could still use just tons of volunteers and more funding. We've found over the years that the funding has dropped off as it becomes a quieter thing and no one talks about it. But the families out there still need help.
Right. Even though it's been 5 years since Katrina, I think it is hard for people to understand and realize that there are still families out there in need of help.
And the way it happens now for me is word of mouth. I'll help a family in a community, like I'm doing a home right now in Moss Point. And it's just behind Escatapa Elementary School. But I got this lady's name. She called me because I did another home in Moss Point off of Highway, I think it was 613 or 663, and it was Jerry Patterson. And so he told them about me, and then of course she called me, and then her aunt called me about her house, and so now I've done 3 in the Moss Point area. And it just goes from there to there. People are still not living in their homes or living with family members or living in a home they shouldn't be living in, you know.
Right.
And so sometimes it's a roof we replace, sometimes it's a total gut renovation. Sometimes it's just trying to make it safe, secure, and sanitary so people can have a safe place to live.
Right. I have to ask, what does your wife think about the Gulf Coast?
Well, actually, my wife was a bit of a sun god before. She lived in Canada, so she would travel every year down to Hollywood, Florida, and enjoy the beach, and she just loves the sun. And even though it's hot and humid here in the sunny South, she said the other day, we were sitting outside at our house that we just built a year or so ago, and she said, you know what, I just love it here. And I said, that just makes it all worthwhile, because, you know, there was a time I would have never thought we'd have moved from Canada to the Deep South. And she's become pretty much a Southern girl raising chickens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she raises, we have about 5 chickens, and she's just enjoying it very much.
God works in mysterious ways.
Very, very mysterious.
You can definitely see the hand of God in that,
Yeah.
because to make a Southern girl out of
Yeah.
a Canadian, that's awesome.
And all of our families here, I mean, both my boys were born in Canada. One was born in Toronto, and one was born in St. Mary's, Ontario, southwestern Ontario. And our history for the past 34 years has been there, and now it's here.
But you grew up in this area? Or?
Yeah, I grew up in Tillman's Corner
Really?
in Mobile, Alabama. I went to W.C. Griggs Elementary School. And in the 6th grade, the middle of the 6th grade, we moved to San Antonio, Texas. After Brooklyn Air Force Base was closed down, my father was transferred to Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio.
So somewhat of a military family?
He was a civil service. He's always been, after he got out of the Navy, he's always worked for the government. He worked for Brooklyn, Kelly, Keesler, and then Ingalls Shipbuilding.
I see. So that explains probably your heart for this area.
It does. I've always enjoyed being here, always coming back for holidays. I love the water. My dad was an avid fisherman and shrimper. His father was a net maker. My mom and dad were born and raised in Balabatry, Alabama. You can't get much more southern and coastal than that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can see how being part of the Volunteers of America that becomes an extended ministry of Calvary Baptist.
Very much so, and the church has really rallied around that. I had a group of students that came from Alternative Break in New York City. They're all New York City University students, and they stayed here on campus at the church. And the ladies of our church, they fed them 3 meals a day, made sure they had lunches, took care of them.
Right.
And it really gives them something to do too, you know, to reach out and touch. And I think our older seniors have really enjoyed just that opportunity as well.
I think you can understand that no matter what your age is, you still have something that you can offer for the kingdom of
Absolutely.
God, whether it's fixing a meal
Yeah.
or washing someone's clothes that's
Yeah.
come in, that's
Yeah.
doing work that maybe they're no longer able to do.
Yeah, and the students appreciated immensely. I think the way they treated those who helped from the church just really encouraged them, you know. So bringing teams in, I still think is a great way to do ministry in a church. And it utilizes your facility, which doesn't often get the kind of utilization you should be giving it.
Right, right. So you're bivocational.
Yes, I give the church about 15 hours a week. I take care of the Wednesday and all day Sunday, morning and evening. I make sure I'm here in case there's any pastoral needs for them, any shepherding care. And truly, my wife and I have fallen in love in the congregation. You know, we've been to a lot of churches to do pulpit film when we first came, looking for a place to, you know, just utilize our gifts. And then Calvary said, you know, we'd like to see you do this on a more permanent basis. And the time that we've spent here, they've been the most welcoming congregation. I think they truly appreciate the ministry, and they understand both the kind of goals I have in my life, which is 1, to care for them, and 2, to care for the community that's still hurting from Katrina.
What's the ages of your children?
My children, Jeremy's 31, he'll be 32 in October, and Stephen's 27, he'll be 28 in December. Both of them live in Mobile. And that's another draw for us, of course. Laura, my wife, she definitely wanted to come home and be with her kids. And so, you know, for years we haven't had an opportunity to see them and spend time with them, being so far away. Now, pretty much every Friday or every other Friday, we're spending pizza night with them and their families, and so it's been quite encouraging. No grandkids yet. 4 kittens, but no grandkids.
I'm sure that's in the near future.
Yeah, I hope so sometimes, but I don't want to push it.
They probably would not appreciate the fact that we just said that on camera.
Yeah, that's right.
But it definitely puts you in perspective of
Yeah.
where you are in your life and where the congregation is in their life. And when we return, I want to talk more about your congregation. I know that you've already mentioned that it's somewhat of a seasoned citizens,
Yeah.
more of a golden age,
Yeah.
but we'll talk further about that when we return.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Church Spotlight. Derek, how would you describe your congregation here?
I would say it's a transitional congregation. There are people who have gone through the changes since Katrina and all the problems with trying to rebuild their lives. And they're an aging congregation, or seasoned citizens, as I call them. They call themselves the 39ers, but most of them are 79ers.
39 and holding.
That's right, yeah. And some of them have gone through the losses, like I have a fair number of widows who have lost husbands recently. And so they're going through the throes of dealing with what does it mean to live without the spouse you've lived with for 50 years. You know what I mean? And then I have some of my seasoned citizens are in the throes of the aging process of health. And so some, we deal with a lot of sadness over that. And, the golden years are not so golden. And so I really see my role in many respects here at Calvary as taking care of shepherding this group of people who are just going through just an immense amount of life change. But it's not the young life change, it's the older life change.
So how do you meet those needs? How do you reach out?
Well, I'm very much a part of the seniors community. Whatever services we have, of course, they're the ones who really attend them. And so I try to be their, not only just their pastor, but their friend, and try to relate to them. And my parents are nearly 82 themselves, and so that gives me a little bit of an understanding of what's going on in their lives and the struggles that they're facing. And I feel close to these people. I mean, I understand. I've worked with enough seniors over the years to understand the unique situations they face and the struggles that they have. And this transitional time is a time I really want to be involved with. In fact, in one of my churches, we did a banquet for those who'd been married 50 years or longer in the community. And it wasn't for our church, it was for the community. And we sent out invitations and in the newspaper, and we had people call in. And we had those people come. Even if their husband or wife was dead, they could still come, but bring a picture of them. And we put on a banquet for them and music for them, and we brought in a Dixieland jazz band for them. And this was all in Canada, and which was very unique, right? Mm-hmm. We detailed their cars when they came. We had valet services for them. We had a gift for them. We had pictures for them. And we had a final dance for them. And if their husband or wife wasn't there, we supplied a husband or a wife for that dance.
Really?
And it became the community event in our city because it honored people who had actually honored a lifetime commitment. And when you talk to those people and when you hear their stories and you see that last song when they're dancing with someone who's not their spouse and you see the tears running down their eyes, then you understand the unique kind of struggles they're facing. Right. And the memories that are theirs. And I think I've always had that kind of heart for older people. And so I find myself quite comfortable here at the church.
Are you going to try to implement that here?
I haven't tried to do that at this stage, but it's something that I could do in this community, and it'd be a fun thing to do.
Right. I'm sure most of the congregation, the members here, would know probably lots of people in the area that could not necessarily go to this church, but could relate to that, having been married 50 years plus.
Yeah. It was just a way to honor them, and it didn't cost them a thing. We didn't charge them a dime. It was just come and share this experience, this slice of life.
Right, celebrate them.
Celebrate them, exactly.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
So what does your congregation do to make an impact in the community right here?
Well, we do some seniors events. In fact, I'm trying to get my commercial driver's license right now. We have a nice little shuttle bus that'll carry about 26 people. And I'm hoping that we can minister to the seniors in our area to give them something to do. They don't always able to get out. Sometimes they need people to drive them to church, or sometimes they don't even cook well for themselves during the week because who wants to cook for one? And sometimes they don't even want to cook for two. And so if we can get them out more often, I think that would be helpful to have some kind of seniors outreach. We do have a youth ministry here. Even though we're an aging church, we have about a dozen to 15 teenagers, younger teenagers, none of them drive. And we have a youth pastor, Billy Parton, and his wife, Suzanne, who minister to them and take care of them. And they planned weekend events and camping events and things like that with them, fun things. And then we have a daycare that ministers to the community. And some of them are from Northrop Grumman, some are from Chevron, some are teachers. We have about 40 students and about 8 teachers that help us with that. And we still feel that's in the society in which we live, with the economy so hard and people having to work 2 jobs, we just think that's something we should continue to do. Mm-hmm. And as long as we can financially do it, we will still do that.
It's still a vital ministry.
That's right. I think it is. And I hope that the community is helped by it.
Right, right. So what would you consider your style of worship here?
Well, you know, style of worship from here is what the style of worship would be when I grew up. You know, I'm 56, and so I grew up in an era where the worship service is pretty much the same every week. You just insert the hymns. You have an invocational prayer. You have a benediction. You have an offertory, and you have preaching. You know, preaching was basically the most significant part of the service in that day and age. And I would say that's what we have. We have a traditional service where it's not so much praise music or worship music. It's not so much contemporary style music. It's pretty much hymns using the piano and the organ. We have a very expensive organ in this church. A lot of churches could not afford an organ that we have. I think it's close to, I think it's insured for about $750,000. It's a very expensive organ.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, but most people use keyboards today.
Sure.
So we use a piano and an organ. We use traditional hymn music. We would only use a hymnal. Rarely would we use a chorus or a praise number. So it does strike a more traditional in the sense of what took place, you know, decades ago.
Sure, but it's part of our heritage. It
is part of our heritage, and for this church, it is the heritage that they are most comfortable with worshiping with. And that's quite unusual for me. You may or may not know, I coming from Canada, I was in a fairly large church that was a very contemporary church. We had about 11 staff members, and I had a worship pastor, and many of our worship teams wrote their own music, and we didn't have a hymn book in the whole church, and we didn't have an organ in the church, and we didn't have a piano in the church. It was a keyboard and drums and lead guitar, bass guitar, violin or horns. You know what I mean? We were very, very contemporary. But where I'm at today, I'm very comfortable with, and with the people I'm very comfortable with. And this is their church, and this is who we're trying to minister to. So if there are individuals or seniors in our community that are still looking for that kind of traditional ministry and really are more comfortable with what they learned in the past, and it's part of it's written in their spiritual DNA, then I would encourage them to be a part of Calvary's ministry. They would appreciate the ministry we have.
It would be a nice fit here.
It would be a nice fit.
Yeah. What would you consider your style of preaching?
My style of preaching is what I would call life situation preaching. I'm more interested in application than I am information. And so for me, I try to make it very true to life, something people can relate to. It's very non-judgmental. It's a place where I hope that the Word of God can minister to the spirit of the person without me trying to coerce that God can do it on His own. And it's filled with illustrations and life stories. And so it is much more life situation preaching is what I would call it. Before
we end our program, give a rundown of your service times.
Our service times on Sunday morning at 10:30 is our main service time, and that's where we have the majority of our people. Sunday night it's at 6 o'clock, and we meet in the Family Life Center, and that's around tables. We usually have coffee and cookies, and it's a short time of prayer with a Bible study. It's interactive and informal. On Wednesday night it's at 6:30, and it's basically a time of prayer for our church family, and it's also a short devotional as well. And those are the key components of what we do.
Derek, it has been a delight. It's been a privilege to meet you and to get a closer look at Calvary Baptist.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. And if you would be interested in seeing your church on Church Spotlight, give us a call or email through our website, wkfk.com. Until next time, Irina Danley, and thank you for watching.